My husband banned me from his sister's wedding at the estate I had rebuilt for military families. 4 hours later, the bride called from her dressing room with my name open inside a wedding magazine. I arrived at Liberty Landing wearing a dark blue dress and carrying a silver gift box for Natalie. Inside the box was the original brass key to the garden chapel. I planned to give it to her after the ceremony. Preston stepped in front of my car before I reached the entrance. "You need to leave." I looked past him toward the white chairs arranged beneath the oak trees. "Why?" "Natalie does not want you here. That is not what she told me last month. She changed her mind." His mother Judith stood near the welcome table, wearing a pearl necklace and a pale rose dress. She looked at me, then at the officer's identification card still clipped inside my handbag. "For once," she said, "let this family have a day that is not about your uniform." "I'm not wearing a uniform." Judith gave a small laugh. "You always wear the rank, Camille, even when nobody can see it." Preston lowered his voice. "You do not belong here." The sentence should have made me angry. Instead, it made me look more carefully. A cream-colored banner covered the bronze Liberty Landing emblem above the gate. Printed across it were the words, "The Rowan Family Estate." That name had never existed in any deed trust document or board record. Behind the banner, several men in expensive suits were speaking with a representative from Crestline Development. Their names appeared on no family guest list I had reviewed. I also saw a photographer taking pictures of the East Wing, not the bride. "What are those investors doing here?" I asked. Preston's jaw tightened. "They are wedding guests." "Since when?" "Since this stopped being your decision." I could have opened the gate with the brass key in my purse. I could have called Nora Caldwell, the estate director, and ordered security to admit me. I did neither. Military service had taught me that when someone became desperate to remove you from a room, it was often wiser to learn what they planned to do after you left. I handed the gift box to an employee at the gate. "Please give this directly to Natalie." Preston reached for it. I pulled it back. "Directly to the bride." The employee nodded. I returned to my car and drove toward Fort Belvoir. In the rearview mirror, Preston watched until I disappeared beyond the trees. Liberty Landing had looked very different 12 years earlier. The roof had collapsed over the western hall. Rain entered through broken windows. Vines covered the brickwork, and the county planned to sell the property to a demolition company. I purchased it with money my parents left me, not because I needed a larger home. I had spent most of my Army career repairing roads, clinics, bridges, and temporary housing after war and natural disasters. I understood that a damaged building could still serve if someone respected its original purpose. With veterans, engineers, military spouses, and private donors, I restored the estate. We converted the East Wing into short-term housing for families visiting wounded service members. The old carriage house became a counseling center. The garden chapel hosted small weddings for military couples who could not afford a commercial venue. Above the main entrance, we installed a simple plaque. "For families who have already paid enough." I never took a salary from the trust. Nora Caldwell, a retired Navy attorney, managed daily operations. I remained the founding trustee and retained final authority over major expenditures, private events, and any transfer of property. Preston knew every rule. He also knew how rarely I spoke about ownership. When his sister Natalie became engaged, I offered the garden chapel as my wedding gift. "A small ceremony," I said. "Family, close friends, and a simple dinner." Natalie cried and hugged me. I do not know how to thank you. You do not need to. Preston looked less grateful. A wedding at an estate should feel like an estate wedding. It is a charitable property, I reminded him. It is also beautiful. That does not make the emergency housing fund a party budget. He smiled as though I had embarrassed him. You can command soldiers, Camille, but you do not understand how families celebrate. Over the next 6 months, the event grew. 40 guests became 100. Then 100 became more than 200. A string quartet became a full orchestra. The family dinner became a formal reception with imported flowers, luxury vehicles, and a feature in Virginia wedding heritage. Whenever I questioned the changes Preston said outside sponsors were paying. What sponsors? People who believe in Natalie. Names. You turn everything into an audit. Because Liberty Landing is audited. He began telling me Natalie felt judged. She thinks you believe her wedding is beneath you. I gave her the venue. You gave her restrictions. When I called Natalie directly, her answers became careful. Preston said you were overwhelmed with base responsibilities. I am busy, not absent. He also said you would rather not attend the planning meetings. I was never invited. She went quiet. That should have been the moment we compared stories. Instead, both of us allowed Preston to stand between the questions. He told Natalie I wanted to keep the wedding hidden in an old section of the property. He told me Natalie feared my rank would make the ceremony feel like a military event. He told Judith I had refused to contribute financially. He told vendors he possessed temporary authority to approve contracts. I learned later that he created that authority while I was participating in a week-long emergency engineering exercise. He copied my signature from a restoration permit signed 3 years earlier. He produced false board minutes stating that I had granted him power over private events. Then he used those papers to access the housing reserve. At the time, I noticed only small inconsistencies. Nora called about an unusually large floral invoice. Preston said the florist had entered the wrong billing code. A catering company requested confirmation of a deposit I had never approved. Preston said an outside donor had reimbursed it. Then the wedding magazine asked me for a photograph. The editor explained that the feature included a section on Liberty Landing's history and my work restoring the estate. I sent a formal portrait and a short statement about the military families we served. Preston later told me the article had been canceled. They decided Natalie's wedding should be the focus. I accepted that explanation. I wanted the day to belong to the bride. By the time I returned to Fort Belvoir after being turned away, I had 3 missed calls from Nora. I called from my office. "Why were you denied entry?" she asked. Preston said Natalie did not want me there. That is not what Natalie believes. What does she believe? That you refuse to attend. I sat down slowly. Nora, who authorized the reception contracts. There was a pause. That is why I called. I found a signature discrepancy this morning. How much? I am still counting. Lock the records room. Already done. Freeze every payment that has not cleared. Done. Do not confront Preston alone. Nora lowered her voice. There are investors here, Camille. Crestline representatives. I saw them. They have a presentation scheduled after dinner. About what? They will not show me the full deck. My office window faced the base roadway. Soldiers moved between buildings in the late afternoon light while I opened the Liberty Landing account remotely. Several expenditures had been coded as family outreach, luxury car service, imported flowers, a designer tent, private security, magazine sponsorship. None belonged to any approved charitable program. At 4:17, my phone rang again. Natalie's name appeared. I answered. Her voice trembled. Camille, why did you not tell us? Tell you what? That your name is on everything. I closed my eyes. What are you looking at? The wedding magazine. Pages turned quickly on the other end. There is a photograph of you in uniform. It says you founded Liberty Landing. It says you are the sole authorizing trustee. That is correct. Preston told us the Rowan Family Foundation owned this place. There is no Rowan Family Foundation. Natalie inhaled sharply. Then who paid for the wedding? I'm trying to determine that now. He said you refused to help us. I approved the garden chapel and a small dinner, nothing more. Her breathing became uneven. Judith told security not to let you in because Preston said you planned to ruin the ceremony. I did not know security had been given that instruction. Nora's voice entered the background. Natalie, I need the magazine. Then she came onto the line. I found the event contract. Whose signature? Yours. I did not sign it. I know. How much was withdrawn? $180,000. From which account? Nora hesitated. The Emergency Housing Reserve. That fund paid for rooms, transportation, and temporary care for families of severely wounded service members. Every dollar had already been promised to someone who needed it. Natalie whispered, My wedding used money meant for injured soldiers. We do not know what you knew, I said. Stay where you are. Do not destroy or sign anything. Preston began shouting somewhere outside the dressing room. Nora lowered her voice. He is demanding access to the records office. Keep it locked. There is more. What? I found a draft letter of intent with Crestline Development. My hand tightened around the phone. For what property? All of Liberty Landing. The bride had called because she finally saw my name in a magazine. What none of us understood yet was that Preston had planned to erase that name from the deed next. The draft letter of intent named Crestline Development as the proposed buyer of Liberty Landing. The purchase price was $14 million. Preston's personal success fee was listed at $950,000. I closed the file and called Nora again. Do not let anyone remove documents, computers, or presentation materials. Security is at the records office. What about the guests? The ceremony has not started. The caterers stopped service when I froze payments. In the background, I heard raised voices and the sharp movement of chairs. Then Judith took Natalie's phone. Camille, you need to come back immediately. 4 hours earlier, she had laughed when Preston told me I did not belong there. Now her voice carried urgency. Why, I asked. People are watching. The vendors are threatening to leave. Natalie is crying. You did not ask me back when you learned I was family. Camille, this is not the time. You are asking because you learned I hold authority. Judith went quiet. Natalie returned to the call. I did not know, she said. I swear I did not know where the money came from. I believe you may not have known. Will you come back? I will return to protect the staff, the trust, and the records. And the wedding. That depends on whether the wedding can continue without using stolen money. I changed into my service uniform before leaving Fort Belvoir, not to make the event about my rank. I wore it because two families staying in the East Wing had recognized my name in the magazine. They needed to see that the person responsible for the property had returned. When I arrived, the cream banner reading the Rowan family estate had been removed. The original Liberty Landing emblem was visible again. Preston stood near the entrance with Judith and several Crestline representatives. "You had no right to shut this down," he said. "I did not shut anything down. You ordered Nora to freeze the accounts. I protected charitable funds after discovering an unauthorized withdrawal." He stepped closer. "You are humiliating my sister." "No. You used her wedding to hide a transaction." Judith tried to interrupt. "Can we discuss this privately?" "We will discuss the financial records with counsel present." Natalie came down the front steps still wearing her wedding dress. Her veil had been removed and mascara darkened the skin beneath her eyes. She held the magazine open to my photograph. "I should have called you months ago." "Yes." "I believed him." "Yes." She looked toward Preston. "He said you hated this family." "I did not." "He said you wanted me married in a storage garden with folding chairs." "I offered you the restored chapel and a dinner for 40 guests." Natalie stared at him. Preston answered before she could ask. "She would never have given you the wedding you deserved." I looked at Natalie. "What do you want today?" She swallowed. "I want to marry Daniel." "Not the magazine feature." "No." "Not the orchestra." "No." "Not the investor dinner." Her eyes moved toward the men from Crestline. "I did not know there was an investor dinner." I asked Nora which expenses remained legitimate and recoverable. The minister had already arrived. The garden flowers had been delivered. A local restaurant could prepare a simple meal for close family. The luxury vehicles, imported arrangements, designer tent, and investor reception were unnecessary. I told Natalie, "Your marriage can begin today. Your brother's transaction cannot." She began crying. This time she did not turn away from me. We moved the ceremony to the small garden chapel. 32 relatives and close friends attended. I paid personally for the minister, the flowers already in place, and a modest dinner. The musicians agreed to let a violinist remain for the ceremony. The rest packed their instruments without protest after Nora explained the funds had been frozen. Daniel took Natalie's hands beneath the old oak beams. No magazine photographers entered the chapel. No Crestline representatives remained. The ceremony lasted 17 minutes. It was the first honest part of the day. Afterward, Natalie returned the brass key I had placed in her gift box. "I cannot accept this. It was meant as a symbol, not ownership. I know that now." I closed her hand around it. "Keep the symbol. Let the records protect the property." Helena Park arrived before the dinner ended. She led the state unit responsible for investigating charitable asset misuse. Nora had contacted her as soon as the false contract appeared. Helena secured Preston's presentation materials, vendor files, and electronic devices used for the event. The first evidence came from the signature itself. Preston copied my name from a restoration permit signed 3 years earlier. The pressure mark spacing and digital edges were identical. The false board minutes claimed I had attended an emergency meeting approving the wedding expenses. On the date listed, I had been inside a restricted engineering exercise at Fort Belvoir. Entry logs and command records proved I could not have attended. No other trustee remembered the meeting because it never occurred. The $180,000 had been moved in 3 transfers. Each was coded as emergency family housing. The money passed through a consulting company controlled by Preston. Vendors received only part of what the trust paid. The remaining funds entered his business account. He did not merely use charity money for flowers and champagne. He charged the trust inflated amounts, paid lower vendor invoices, and kept the difference. Helena found an email Preston sent to Virginia Wedding Heritage. Remove Colonel Camille Rowan's name from the final layout. Replace it with the Rowan Family Foundation. Do not mention the military housing mission. The editor replied that the printed issue had already gone to distribution. Preston sent another message. Then do not deliver copies until after the event. A junior employee delivered them anyway because Natalie's feature package included 20 advance copies. The mistake that exposed him was not mine. It was a magazine shipment he failed to stop. The investigation also recovered his presentation to Crestline. The title slide read, Liberty, Landing Luxury Residences. The plan converted the East Wing into private suites, demolished the counseling center, and replaced the garden chapel with a member-only event hall. The plaque reading for families who have already paid enough did not appear anywhere. A projected budget included removing all references to the military charity within 60 days of closing. Preston had promised Crestline that the Rowan family controlled the estate. He planned to use the wedding photographs as proof that the property already functioned as an upscale private venue. The bride, the orchestra, the luxury vehicles, and the magazine were not simply expenses. They were marketing materials. Judith admitted she knew investors would attend. Preston said Camille approved a development partnership. Did you see her approval? Helena asked. No. Did you ask her? Judith looked toward me. No. Natalie handed Helena her phone. Her messages showed Preston telling her I refused to support the wedding. He wrote that I was embarrassed by the Rowan family and wanted to hide the ceremony from military colleagues. Another message said, Do not call Camille directly. She will use rank to make you feel small. Natalie had followed that instruction. So had Judith. Preston had separated us because one direct conversation would have destroyed his plan. The day after the wedding, my attorney sent him a carefully worded proposal. I was willing to review whether any legitimate ceremony costs could be recognized as a special charitable grant. I would consider a statement explaining that Preston had acted from family pressure rather than criminal intent. The proposal did not promise approval. Preston read it as fear. He messaged me within an hour. Sign the ratification, and I can make everyone believe this was always your gift. He attached a prepared document validating the false board meeting the transfers and the Crestline negotiations. All I needed to do was add my real signature beneath the copied one. I forwarded the message to Helena. She replied with 4 words. Do not answer yet. Natalie visited Liberty Landing 2 days later. She wore ordinary clothes and carried the wedding magazine against her chest. We sat in the garden chapel where she had spoken her vows. I believed every ugly thing he said about you, she told me. It was easier than asking you directly. Why? Because if I called and you confirmed it, I would have lost the wedding. If I called and you denied it, I would have had to admit my brother was lying. That choice became more expensive with time. I know. She placed the magazine beside me. I am sorry. An apology opens the door. Your choices afterward decide whether trust walks through it. I gave Helena every message. That was the right choice. I will testify. That will be harder. I know. For the first time since the gate, I believed she understood the difference between regret and repair. The emergency hearing took place 12 days later. Preston entered the courtroom wearing a charcoal suit and carrying the false authorization documents in a leather folder. He looked rested, confident. His attorney argued that I had approved the wedding verbally authorized use of the trust and agreed to explore the Crestline sale. According to Preston, I changed my mind only after Judith embarrassed me at the gate. He described the investigation as a marital dispute transformed into public retaliation by a powerful army officer. I admitted that I had authorized Natalie's use of the chapel. I admitted I had offered a modest dinner. I will accept responsibility for every expense I actually approved, I said. Preston leaned back slightly. Judge Rebecca Sloan opened the email sent to the wedding magazine. Mr. Rowan, you claim your wife approved the event and the proposed sale. Yes, Your Honor. Then why did you order the magazine to remove her name? Preston glanced at his attorney. It was a branding decision. Judge Sloan lifted another printed email. And why did you instruct security not to admit the person whose approval you say you possessed? For the first time since I returned to Liberty Landing, Preston understood I had not come back to protect his story. Preston looked down at the leather folder as though the answer might be written somewhere inside it. It was a misunderstanding, he said. Camille wanted the event kept separate from her military role. Judge Sloan turned to me. Colonel Rowan, did you ask to have your name removed from the article? No, Your Honor. Did you instruct security to deny you entry? No. Did you authorize Mr. Rowan to represent himself as the owner of Liberty Landing? No. Preston leaned toward his attorney. My wife approved the wedding verbally. I approved Natalie's ceremony in the garden chapel, I said. I did not approve a commercial reception, an investor presentation, or the withdrawal of charitable funds. Judge Sloan opened the venue contract. Where is the original authorization bearing Colonel Rowan's verified signature? Preston handed over the document he had brought. Helena Park called the digital document examiner. The examiner displayed my authentic restoration permit beside the wedding contract. The signatures were identical down to a small ink break above the final letter. No person signs their name with exactly the same pressure pattern twice, she explained. This image was copied and placed onto the contract. Preston said I had allowed him to use a stored signature for family business. Judge Sloan asked, do you have written authority permitting that? No. Any witness to a verbal authorization? My mother understood the arrangement. Judith sat behind him. When called forward, she admitted she had never heard me approve the contracts. She had trusted Preston because he told her the Rowan family would soon control the property. The judge turned one page at a time. The false board minutes came next. They claimed I attended an emergency meeting and approved $180,000 in wedding expenses. My Fort Belvoir entry records showed I had been inside a restricted command exercise that entire day. Every real board member submitted a sworn statement confirming no meeting occurred. Judge Sloan asked Preston, who attended this meeting? He named 2 trustees. Both were in the courtroom. Nora Caldwell rose first. I did not attend because there was no meeting. The second trustee gave the same answer. Preston's collar darkened with sweat. He argued the records had been created later to memorialize informal conversations. Helena placed the bank transfers on the evidence screen. The first transfer left the emergency housing reserve and entered Preston's consulting company. The second paid vendors at inflated amounts. The third moved the unused difference into his private operating account. The judge asked, "Why did charitable housing money pass through your company?" To simplify payments. Why did your company retain more than $40,000? Administrative fees. Where were those fees approved? Preston did not answer. Helena then introduced the investor presentation. The first slide showed Liberty Landing beneath the title Luxury Residences. The next slides removed the family housing wing, the counseling center, and the garden chapel. One page estimated revenue from private memberships. Another listed Preston's success fee. Judge Sloan read the amount aloud. $950,000. Preston raised both hands slightly. The sale would have created financial stability for everyone. For whom the judge asked? The family, the trust, the community. Helena displayed the trust deed. It prohibited private sale for commercial housing unless the charitable mission ended through a formal court process, and all assets transferred to another qualified nonprofit. No such process had begun. No board vote existed. No beneficiary organization had been selected. Preston had no authority to sell anything. The room grew quieter when Helena opened his emails. One message to Crestline read, "Keep Camille away until the photographs and investor presentation are finished." Another message to Judith said, "Once the family appears to control the estate, Crestline will stop asking who really owns it." Then Helena displayed the message Preston sent me after the wedding. "Sign the ratification and I can make everyone believe this was always your gift." Judge Sloan looked at him. "You asked your wife to validate documents after the money was taken." "I was trying to protect Natalie." Natalie stood when called. "My brother never told me the estate belonged to a military charity," she said. "He told me Camille refused to help us and that our family foundation owned the property." "Did Colonel Rowan ever tell you that?" "No." "Did you ever ask her directly?" Natalie lowered her eyes. "No." She handed the court her phone. The messages showed Preston repeatedly ordering her not to contact me. One read, "She will make you feel ungrateful. Let me handle her." Another said, "Do not mention Crestline until after the ceremony." Natalie's voice shook, but she continued, "I believed him because he was my brother. That does not excuse what I accepted without checking." Preston turned toward her. "You are choosing her over your own family." Natalie met his eyes. "I'm choosing the truth over the person who used my wedding to steal." I felt no satisfaction hearing it. A brother and sister were losing each other in public. A marriage of my own had already ended in everything but paperwork. Judge Sloan asked Preston the question that finished what the evidence had started. How does transferring charitable property into a project paying you nearly $1 million benefit the wounded military families named in this trust? Preston stared at the table. His mouth moved once. No words came. The court declared every false authorization invalid. The Crestline letter of intent had no legal force. The frozen funds remained protected while investigators traced the missing money. Preston was immediately barred from representing Liberty Landing, contacting its vendors, or entering the property without written permission. The matter was referred for criminal investigation involving forged signatures, charitable asset theft, financial misrepresentation, and attempted unlawful transfer of restricted property. Crestline withdrew from the deal before the hearing ended. Its representatives later stated that Preston had concealed the trust restrictions and misrepresented ownership. His consulting company lost 2 major clients within a month. Vendors returned unused deposits. The magazine refunded the promotional fee after learning it had been paid from restricted funds. Most of the $180,000 was eventually recovered. The portion Preston moved into private debt payments took longer, but the court ordered restitution. Judith issued a public statement correcting her claim that the Rowan family owned Liberty Landing. She also repaid personal expenses charged to the event after Helena showed that Preston had used charitable money. Her apology to me came later. "I laughed when he said you did not belong there," she said. "I thought your silence meant guilt." "My silence meant I was watching. I should have asked you." Yes, I did not offer immediate forgiveness. During the investigation, all communication went through attorneys. Judith was not permitted to use Natalie as a messenger or ask me to protect Preston from consequences. Natalie made different choices. She testified, surrendered every message, and helped the trust contact vendors. She did not ask me to withdraw my complaint or preserve her brother's reputation. Months later, she visited Liberty Landing and volunteered in the family dining room. She washed dishes without asking whether anyone noticed. That mattered more than another apology. Preston wrote to me from a detention facility after charges were filed. He said he had wanted his family to be proud of him. He claimed living beside my rank and accomplishments made him feel invisible. I answered once, "You did not build a legacy. You placed your name over work you were willing to destroy." I filed for divorce. I did not hate him. Hatred would have kept him central to a life he had already tried to appropriate. 18 months later, Liberty Landing was full again. A wounded sergeant's family occupied the East Wing while he recovered from surgery. 2 military spouses met with counselors in the carriage house. A young couple prepared to marry beneath the garden oak. The recovered money returned to the emergency housing reserve. Natalie and Daniel marked their first anniversary with a quiet dinner in the same chapel. They donated what a luxury celebration would have cost to a new program called the Open Door Ceremony Fund. The fund helps service members, veterans, and Gold Star families hold small weddings without debt. On the first spring ceremony, I stood inside the main hall with the original brass key in my hand. A young bride arrived beside her fiancé, who walked slowly with a cane after months of rehabilitation. She looked at the plaque above the entrance. "For families who have already paid enough." "Is this really available to us?" she asked. "Yes." "Who built this place?" "Many people did." I unlocked the chapel doors and stepped aside. The wedding magazine that exposed Preston's lie was never framed as a tribute to me. Nora placed 1 copy in the trust archive beside the forged contract and the original deed. My name in that magazine did not make me important. It made his lie impossible to continue. They said I did not belong at the wedding, but the records showed the wedding stood inside what I had built. Preston did not exclude me to protect the bride. He excluded me to protect the forgery. People who value your authority more than your presence are not asking you back for love. An apology may reopen a door, but only consistent truth keeps it open. He covered the name on the sign. He could not cover the purpose written into the deed. If someone tells you that you do not belong in a place sustained by your sacrifice, do not argue for permission. Preserve the records, protect the mission, and let the truth identify who was only pretending to own it. I would be honored if you shared this story with someone who has been pushed aside from what they helped build, and join me again for another story about dignity evidence and the quiet strength of returning for the right reason.